SQL Server Service Broker module is going on, and in this module we will discuss about the security. In the previous videos we have implemented some scenarios of the service broker. We have implemented one scenarios where both services, initiator and targets, exist in the same database. And then we implemented another scenario where the initiator service exists in one database while the target service exists in another database. But both databases are in the same SQL Server instance. Now we are going to implement a third scenario where the initiator service exists in the database where this database exists in the SQL Server 1 instance, and the target service which is hosted in the database and this database exists in SQL Server 2 instance. And now there are two SQL Server instances, and these are two now two these SQL Server exist in two different servers, and so the hosting database are now into different servers, and now the network is involved. So when the network is involved, we have to consider the security also. We have to implement the security also to make the conversation secure. So let's move to the security. What kind of security service broker supports? Service brokers security relies on the certificate. And what is a certificate? A certificate is a digitally signed security object which contains the public key, or it may contain the private key for SQL Server, and we can generate this certificate by using any external certificate generator, or we can use the SQL Server which can generate the certificate, and SQL Server uses the SSL and TLS certificate. So when the service broker is concerned, service broker, as we know, is a message delivery framework. When the message is passing from one service to another service, and if these services are in different SQL Server instances and there is a network, so we should have to make sure that our message will be delivered successfully, and it will be secure, and it will be encrypted, and there is no tampering of message. So to make sure all these security levels, we have we have to create the certificate, and certificate will do all this for us. Certificate will make the connection secure. When this as one service from one instance want to connect to another server which is in another instance, so we need this server, this instance want to connect with another instance, so this instance make a connection with the other instance. So this connection will be opened on a TCP/IP layer. So these connections between the instances should be secure. The certificate will make sure about this one, and certificate will encrypt the data for the connection. When the message will send from the initiator service to the target service, these messages which contains the data, this data should be encrypted, and the certificates will make sure that certificate will give the guarantees that by using the certificate we can encrypt the data, and we can decrypt the data, and also we can use the certificate to identify the remote database. So these are the points which we can implement by using the certificates. So the service broker's security depends on the certificates. So now what are the securities available in with the service broker? Service brokers supports two levels of security. One is the dialog security, and the other one is the transport security. As we know, the service broker is a message delivery framework. When the message is sent from the initiator to the target service, and both services are in different SQL Server instance databases, so now we have to implement the securities. And for example, this service want to make sure that the message should be delivered to the other service is it should be accurate and correct, and there is no tampering of the message. So this from service with the security which is from service to service is known as the dialog security. So dialog security will implemented from service to service for one conversation, and transport security, which is the other level of the security. It is the security is between the instances. So we will discuss in detail. First, we will know a little bit more what about the dialog security. So the dialog security, it provides where the encryption and the remote authentication and remote authorization. So dialog security is the default security level. When we have implemented this service broker applications in the previous videos, we have implemented this dialog security, which is a default security level. Like this one is the SQL Server Management Studio. In the SQL Server Management Studio, we have implemented our service broker application, and this is the we opened the dialog between the two services from service initiator service to the target service. And here we used this with encryption is equal to on clause. When we are using this class, this class start the dialog security for this conversation. Dialog security is for a particular conversation. And when we are using this encryption is equal to on, so this dialog security will be used by default. And if we don't want to use the dialog security, we want to off the, so we have to, here we have to use the off uh, value. We have to assign this encryption class to the off value. Then this dialog security will not be used. But we have to make sure that when this are these instances are remote instances, and we are using the remote bindings. The one service is in one instance and the other service in a remote instance, and we are using the remote binding. Then even we switched off this encryption class, the remote dialog security will be used. So this is the one point we have to keep in our mind. And dialog security will encrypt the message, and this we know that the dialog security is from service to service, and services exist in the databases. So dialog security we have to create in the database. And for the because the dialog security depends on the certificates, and these certificates we have to create in the databases. Initiator service will create its own its certificate in this in where it will create the certificates in that database where it is hosted. And the for the on the targets side, the database which hosts the target service will we have to create the certificates for the dialog in this database as well. So dialog security, the service broker will encrypt all the message which are sent outside of the SQL Server instances. If this both databases are in the same instance, then there will not any encryption. This encryption, it will encrypt the message only when these services are in different SQL Server instances, because in the same instance the SQL, same memory is used, so no need of instance, no need for the encryption. So encryption will not be used if the both services are in the same SQL Server. You, either in the different database or in the same database, but if it is the instance is the same, then encryption, this dialog security will not encrypt the messages. It will encrypt the data only when the instances are different. And these certificates which are used for this encryption, which are used for authentication, which are used for authorization, these certificates we have to create in the hosting database. And the dialog security is of two types. One is the full security and the other one is the anonymous security. What is the full security? Full security like we have the initiator service in one instance, and we have the target service in another instance. And now this initiator service and target service want to communicate, they have to share their certificates. Like this initiator hosting service instance have shared the certificates with the target, and the target will share the instance certificate with the initiator database instance. So both will share their certificates, and now they know each others because they have the certificates and they have the public keys. So when this initiator service will send the message, it will use that in it will encrypt this message by using the key which is provided by the target service, and this is the public key. And when it will send the message to the target service, and target service will use its public key to decrypt this message. So to the target service, and target service will use its public key to decrypt this message. So in this way, the reliable conversation will be established between the initiator and target using the full dialog security. In the full dialog security, both services will share their certificates along with the public keys. And in case of the anonymous security, in the anonymous security, uh, the one service will share that its certificates while the other will not share. For example, the target service will share its certificate with the initiator service. So initiator service have the information. Initiator service can identify the target service, but the target service don't know about the initiator service because initiator service did not share the certificate. So in this way, this is the this security will known as the anonymous dialog security. So how then the target service will process the message which are coming from the initiator service? How this target service will identify the initiator service in that case when the initiator service will not share the certificates? So there on this instance, that hosting database have the fixed database role known as the public. This we have discussed in the start of the SQL Server modules. When we started in those starting modules, we have discussed about the fixed database roles. So there is a fixed database role public. This public role will be used to process these messages which are coming from the initiator service. So this is the anonymous security. The target service will share the certificates with the initiator service, so it's known to the initiator service, and the initiator service is not sharing anything with the target service. So target service will use the public database role. We will see when we are going to implement this security, and we will see how to use this public database role. Now this is the dialog security, where the which depends on the certificates and which can be a full security and anonymous security. There is another level of the security while we